Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Last Epoch build guide video leading into the 1.0 launch on 21st of February. David Harbour! Yes, the one and only David Harbour. Jim Hopper. Stranger Things, you know who it is. He has designed a unique item called the Wraithlord's Harbour, and I'm gonna make a build out of it. Now obviously I've been unable to playtest this, but I will play this as my second character when the league actually launches. This helmet is basically changing the way the summon Wraith is working by summoning a Wraithlord who will then himself summon Wraiths for you. And every now and then when you reach maximum amount of Wraiths, he will consume all of your non-Wraith minions to shoot out necrotic beams. Now the cast time of the necrotic beams is kind of low. The base damage is not too good, so I decided to look into ways of scaling this build by not thinking about the necrotic beam, but rather having the Wraithlord be used as the summoning process of these minions, so I wouldn't have to worry about the mana cost of summoning these minions themselves. Another quick thing that happened to this was the Aberrant's Call was nerfed to the point where the minion melee damage you see here was actually minion damage before. This means that going Flame Wraith approach with this is a little bit scuffed. I think genuinely that if you do a Flame Wraith approach, maybe you wouldn't run an Aberrant's Call, but the actual perk of running Aberrant's Call has less to do with the minion damage scaling and more to do with the quantity of Wraiths you can get. This time we can get up to 12 maximum Wraiths, and if you look into the Summer Wraith spec, we can get +2 with a base of 6, putting us at 8 plus the maximum up to 12. That's 20 Wraiths. That's a lot. So I've taken this to heart and look at the fact that we get a ton of movement speed, as well as from the Wraithlord's helmet itself, we get a lot of minion movement speed, and therefore I wanted to look into the possibility of scaling necrotic melee Wraiths. To do this, we're going to use a Wraithlord's Harbour. Obviously, this planner will be linked in the descriptions below, as I don't have a written guide for it, and keep in mind this is not play tested yet, so be wary, and once I've play tested it, and if it works very well, I'll make a written guide for it. So this is showing high-end game gear, stacking up armor and intelligence, and tons of resistances. We're doing this with critical strike chance for ourselves and our minions, with intelligence on the LP for the Wraithlord. We're going to use a death rattle with minion damage, and if you can get some health, that would be preferable. Using a Titan Heart, since we're using a two-handed weapon, to reduce less damage or increase the less damage taken modifier for us, with of course percent HP and increased critical strikes. This is how we get a ton of HP, but we're sacrificing regeneration. The Aberrant's Call, we're going to go for both of the melee flat adaptive minion damage modifiers, which is now available in 1.0. Outside of this, we are going to use the rings having minion damage and minion health with a health roll and a resistance roll. This goes for both of the rings. Belt, I would prefer to go for a movement speed belt. If you're struggling with resistances, you can actually use a resistance base to accommodate and actually help your gearing early on. And then obviously we're going to go for the Citadel boots. And do keep in mind that the Citadel boots is providing reduced bonus damage taken from crits, and we're going to have that as a modifier as well, and have the experimental sealed affix to move our minions with us when we use our transplant. Very important to make this build comfortable. There are a few ways you can play this and change around and make this teleport different, but this is how I'm going to approach it. We will be using a rare Exalted Relic with necrotic damage, minion health, and then some resistances. The gloves will be the Jeweler's Obsession because the Raven's Rise is not going to affect the actual necrotic wraiths, so therefore the Jeweler's Obsession will be better. Now the question here is that we would be better off using the hybrid health as an LP here, but if the Wraithlord is unable to properly summon all of your wraiths, it's very likely we're going to be LPing in cast speed here instead, since minions are going to share the stats that you get from the Jeweler's Obsession gloves. The glyphs are very, very generic. We're going to have 2 of the large idols giving us marked for death for our minions and HP. And the rest of the large idols are basically just HP, and then we're going to run with another health on the suffix. And this is going to look like this. Same thing when it comes to the suffix of the large idol. Whereas the stout idols are looking at double HP. This is to further excel the efficiency of our life pool. As you can see, with an average roll with the LP, of course, we're sitting at 3.8, up to 4.6 if you have max roll, which that's unrealistic, and that's about it. Do keep in mind that the reduced bonus damage taker crits is very important, so you might want to have to sacrifice a life roll here and there, or maybe even LP it into the helmet if you're running low on bases. But again, this is an end game, highly set up end game planner, so do keep that in mind. And this is why I would strongly recommend that you actually go to Icy Veins leveling guide, which you can do by hovering over each of the class. This one is, of course, playing as a Necromancer. So if you go to the Acolytes and you hover over, you see the Acolyte overview, but I would look at the Necromancer leveling, click on this, and you'll have a full written guide where you can go through the process of how to level an actual Necromancer. Now, that in mind, we're going to move on and check out the passive tree. The passive tree itself is very generic. We're going to run Minion Armor and Armor for ourselves, as we're using that as a defensive layer. We're going to be running some Vitality and Minion HP. Also get some Minion attack speed here, and we are going to pick up the Minion Armor for level to keep our minions alive. In the Lich, to get Drain Life, we're going to put 5 points into Intelligence, and then the rest of the points goes into the Necromancer tree, which we focus on the Minion attack speed and damage, as well as the Minion health and armor. And then we're going to pick up a little bit of war retention because we're going to get a tiny bit of war playing this, and then over to the Cursed Blood for more damage output of our minions. Now, we could move these 5 points into the Cursed Blood. I haven't really decided how I'm going to approach it yet, but this is a rough draft of the planner that I'm planning on playing. It's very likely I'll be moving these 5 points into the Cursed Blood, so do keep that in mind. 4 points of Shred. I don't think we're going to need more than that because of the attack speed. If I feel like we're not hitting reasonable numbers of Shred on the enemies, because you're going to hit a diminishing returns that are a little over 100 stacks, I might move some of these points into this to achieve that if I don't reach it. But I can't tell till we actually start playing. We're obviously going to max out the increased HP, make sure the minions all resistance is maxed out here, and then we're going to run the increased health region per minion. Now, the reason we do this is not because of the region, because we're neglecting that completely when we run a Titan's Heart, but it's giving me the option of potentially ignoring this to simply have life region on the build and not using a Titan's Heart. I haven't really decided yet, but it would mean that we're going to run a plate armor that is I think it's called Crescent Plate, that will give us some endurance threshold instead. It looks like this. Basic endurance Revenant Plate. Gives us % of our max HP gain as endurance threshold. So that's the other option in case we're not going to run a Titan Heart. I have yet to decide. Either way, we get armor per minion, scaling us even further. Obviously, running attack cast speed for our minions, get some crit, get some more intelligence crit, make sure we have minion crit multi from here. Obviously, the flat fire and necrotic damage is crazy good, and this node is just beyond bonkers, and that's how the tree is set up. Now, if I were to move some points around, like I said, I would move some of these points into the Cursed Blood and maybe even the Armor Shred. That's about it. And I might change the chest piece. Those are the things I'm a little bit careful with deciding till I know. Outside of that, skill-wise, it's very simple. As you can see here, we're not using the approach of anything but the abilities that we're skilling. So we're not going to use an unspec'd Transplant, which is very generic. Haste and Frenzy for the clear speed purposes. Make sure it pops up something like Cursing. Have the Bone Armor and the cooldown reduction. That's about it. Very generic. Very generic Dread Shade setup. We're going to be taking the armor per Vitality, which means that Vitality is actually not a bad stat to have on your gear. So I might be tweaking around with that in case I don't make any other changes. Outside of that, we're going to make sure that it doesn't drain any HP. And then we're going to put it up for having the necrotic damage and make sure that it affects us for some cast speed as well, because it's very, very comfortable. And that's a very generic setup for the Dread Shade. Outside of that, we are going to run a Bone Curse, also a very generic setup. We're going to make sure it deals necrotic damage, shred armor, which is why I don't think we're going to need more armor shred, and then make sure we have some kill threshold from it. Now, the two more important things. We're going to talk about the Summon Wraith first. Summon Wraith, we're going to be going straight up for more necrotic damage, and then going into summoning cast speed into the more Wraiths. Then we're going to pick up all of the crit nodes for them, because we want them to crit a lot. Now, if the Wraithlord is unable to actually summon these bad boys, we're going to need some cast speed for this build. We're going to be taking up the more melee attack speed. This is a very strong node, and we would preferably have 3 points in this, which means I'm probably going to take 1 point off from this and have it like this from the start. But if you're able to get levels of your Summon Wraiths on some of your gear pieces, then I would recommend filling out this one and maybe even maxing out more cast speed for the minion if it's needed, and or the Jeweler's Obsession cast speed. So that's how the Wraith setup is looking, and then we're going to be looking at life drain. Now, the build has no region. It has no special ability that we're spamming because our Wraithlord is doing this for us. So the solution to this is to use the drain life. But we don't want to sit and channel. Who wants to do that? That sounds terrible. You're stationary. Fuck that. Instead, we're going to go to the drain life is a cast. And this drain life is going to cost an insane amount of mana. Obviously, this will be a problem to sustain. But we're going on the left-hand side, which makes us have the ability of the Drain Life hitting our minions and giving us mana. And then we're going to make sure we have health leech as well. And then we have the Dark Shackles from this as well, which is insanely effective. So essentially the way this is played is that you're throwing down Drain Life pools. You can place multiple of them. As long as your minions are touching this pool, you are getting tons of mana and tons of HP just from that happening. Besides this, we're also getting a thing called Contempt. This allows us to get us increased armor per stack, which is a percent scaling, and all resistance, and it stacks up to 5 times. And then we're putting in some points into Enduring Contempt to make this linger for a few seconds after the Drain Life stops, so that you can keep this buff up consistently as you're playing. Because the playstyle will be that you summon the Wraithlord, he will summon the Wraiths. You transplant aggressively, you curse the Bone Curse, and you cast Drain Life where the enemies are. Because you have melee minions, your minions will move up to where the Drain Life is happening on top of the enemy, and you will have a full sustain, full mana recovery, damage output, and just be very, very safe. So that's the idea of this build, at least. I have no idea if this will work or how it. Well, I'm pretty confident it will work. I just don't know how effective it will be. So like I mentioned, some node changes on the tree, potential change on the chest, and that's the general idea of the necrotic Wraith approach with the Wraithlord helmet made by David Harbour. So big shout out to David Harbour. I'm a big fan of this actor. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm very happy to see that he's making a minion related item for Last Epoch. And I hope you guys have all the success in the launch on the February 21st. Speaking of that, we actually have a little bit of a special thing happening. If you haven't tried out Last Epoch yet and you're decided that, hey, I'm going to try this game out, you can check out my Nexus store link in the descriptions below, and you can actually support the game, this channel at the same time as you're supporting the game, because I will get a little piece of the cookie if you buy it from that store. Another thing that's happening on the launch is that I'm going to be going absolutely crazy, so make sure you tune in on the Twitch stream. We have a Twitch hype train starting, which is going to dictate the minimum amount of hours I'll be streaming. So if that hype train hits the level 40, as an example, I'll be live for 40 hours consecutively, and each level of that hype train on Twitch will... The 11th Hour Games is a big fan of this, and they're giving away a game key for each level that hype train hits. So make sure you don't miss that out. And that's going to happen at 5 p.m. CET, 1 hour before the actual cycle starts. So I'll see you guys in the Twitch chat, and I hope you guys have fun. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you guys in the next one. So till then, I'm not going to miss out on the blessings. I almost forgot. So let's go back and check it. We're going to run Void Resistance, and then we're going to have Lightning Resistance, and then we're going to run All Resistance or Minion All Res. Pretty confident we're going to be enough having All Resistance. And then just armor and armor on the 2 last ones. That's it. All the links in the description below. Catch you guys in the next one. Stay safe. Keep rocking.